we're at the 11 o'clock workshop that Jeff gave that I think you already know. That was a lot of fun and very valuable. For those that were not, we had a great time in there, and there were some really interesting things that Jeff explored with us, especially in talking about the kind of verbs and actions that we do in games, and showing us how there's a whole lot of things that we can do in games that we never do, and that unexplored territory, and kind of touching at that, which was a lot of fun and eye-opening for me to look at it that way. And so right now he's going to be doing a talk that he has prepared that's talking about games, story-based games, and characters, and empathy, and how you can connect with your player, and how your player can connect with characters and stories, and so forth. And so Jeff is currently the director of the Interactive PlayLab in New York, and he has a vast experience in all kinds of interactive theater, right? To say that he has experienced just in improv is a vast understatement. His improv is actually this small little nugget within a larger pool of interactive experiences, and he is a master of that larger domain. And so there's a lot that you will be certainly learning from him. So let's give a hand to Jeff Wirth.
So, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What is this?
A game.
Okay. What is it that makes it a game?
An interaction between two people with a set bound of rules.
Okay. So I'm not allowed to punch you in the nose in this place.
No.
I mean, it's more of an implied, but it's an assumption that we make, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there are rules in this interaction that we're having, right, as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an interaction. Is this a game?
You could say so. Yeah.
How?
There's a tug and a pull. There has to be an ebb and a flow or rhythm. You speak, then I speak.
So there is a back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So let me pose this to you. What if that's interactivity?
I agree.
What if interactivity is one entity speaking, another entity hearing, then that entity thinking, and as a result of that thinking, that entity then speaks? If that seems like that's a definition that could be used for interactivity. So this is interactive, this is interactive. So tell me, not a heartbreaking story, but tell me a sad story from your life.
From my life?
Or from the life of somebody that you know. And you don't have to name names, but just, yeah.
A friend had to escape their country because of political pursuit.
Yep.
And had to completely adapt to like a new life, a new lifestyle, or a new culture.
Okay. And what is sad about that?
Just the idea that something was taken from you, and that if at any given point you can go back to it, it will never be the same as the way you left it.
Got it. Cool. So leaving and not being able to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
is that a win or a loss?
I would argue neither. It depends on how you look at it. Because it could be a new beginning, or it could just be fatalistic and it's just the end.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Awesome. I want to have a conversation with you. I'm not a big fan of lectures. So I truly want you to speak back to me. And frequently the assumption is, oh, well, I should say what is right. I'm not particularly interested in that. Because right is fairly limiting. It's not that it's not useful. It's just that if you're trying to be right, you're less likely to find what's wrong that's also right. Okay? So when we talk today, I don't want you feeling like, I've got to get this right. I've got to show what I know. You already know what you know. Let's find out what we don't know. Cool? Is that all right? Right on. Nice. So what would be some things that you would say differentiate game from story? Bearing in mind that, yeah, they can coexist and that kind of stuff.
Your actions actually have effects and make changes in the world, and there is a goal you are trying to reach.
And that is which?
For a game. Both of those are for a game.
So say that one more time. You
have actions that change the world state in some way, or affect the world in some way, like your decisions actually matter, and there is a goal that at some point you're trying to reach. You can win or lose a game.
Okay. Okay. Can you win or lose life?
Not really.
Tell me about that.
I mean, I guess you could set personal goals, but there isn't a general win or loss state, I suppose.
That the system does not define this is what win or loss is. Because if we had that, man, life would be so much easier, wouldn't it? Okay? Cool. So win or loss seems to be more in which arena for in this case?
I mean, that was an aspect of game, although the reason I said that your decisions change things is because puzzles have an end state, but you can't really lose a puzzle, and there's always, if you make decisions, it doesn't really, I mean, it changes what you have to do next, but it doesn't really change the world as a whole, unless I was trying to make the difference that your, the choices you make actually matter in some way and change things.
Okay.
In a game.
Cool. So we're looking a little bit at the interactive component of how much does what you do alter this thing that then gives something back based on what you have done. Cool. Yes, in the back.
Choice. There's probably going to be a limited number of choices in a game versus a story.
Cool. Why? Why is that?
Man hours.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. That the constraints of what it takes to make something happen. And why is it that the perception is... So you have a lot of choices in which?
Well, the writer probably has a lot of choices when he's writing the story.
Yep. But when they get delivered, what happens? When a story gets delivered, after the writer has completed it, now people are receiving the story in whatever fashion they're receiving it. What has happened to the amount of choices?
It's being interpreted by the user's experience.
Mm-hmm. And it's much narrower because the scope of what could be is huge. So in terms of which one feels like it has more in terms of choice, and I'm talking in broad strokes, story or game? Okay? And how much does that actually happen in story? It happens for the writer, but in terms of those who then receive or engage with the story that the writer has created?
I would assume quite a bit.
Can you give me an example?
Just about any fantasy or science fiction novel I've read is pretty wide open as far as interpretation. But again, if that was to be converted to game, we would be limited by what the developer's vision was for the story.
Got it. So when you're saying wide open in terms of choices, it's not choices that necessarily drive the plot. It's choices of how you understand what it means.
I suppose so, yes.
Okay, cool. That's really cool. Because that is a kind of choice that you can create for. Like, many times when people think about choice, they think in terms of choose-your-own-adventure novels. You know, the folks who are not in the gaming industry, it's like, oh, like choose-your-own-adventure? Which is branching, and you're limited by the number of pages that you can have in the book and the number of stories that you can fit into those number of pages. Yes?
I would say span as in a time, because stories have a defined beginning, middle, and end, whereas a game has a potential to be indefinite in nature. You can have games that are based on stories that have a beginning, middle, and end, or you could have a game that has no story or no purpose, that is just indefinite and just persistent.
Cool. So do you feel how there's a lot of things that live both in the world of story and in the world of game? Then why don't we just have one word for that? You'll find I don't ask rhetorical questions.
I feel like it's too broad, too much encompasses story and game to really fit into one word and convey it. Yeah. This is what that means. Like, there's too many aspects to both. It's hard to put it into one word.
You can see how there's a lot of stuff that's living in both, right? So why do we need to differentiate? Why have words been created that different? I don't know that we need to differentiate, but why have words been created that differentiate?
Just for practical purposes, in order to discuss them effectively, you need to have two separate words.
Okay, let me put it in human terms. Like going, oh yeah, I was talking to this person the other day and they were saying how they really were not excited about having to leave the country for a few weeks and come back. Like, I can be talking about this person. But if I go, yeah, I was talking to this blonde person the other day and they were talking about how they're not excited. Like, we don't need the definition of this person is blonde in order to be able to go have a useful conversation about it, right? And yet, we seem to have a need for two words in which a lot of stuff is shared in order to be able to talk about stuff.
So, I feel like even though they share a lot of things,
Yeah?
when you read a story or even when you tell it, that's satisfying a different impulse that you're trying to get from yourself. Whereas when you play a game and you affect on the world, that's again satisfying a completely different aspect of your life.
So what if you could affect on the world not by reading a story, not by hearing a story, but by living a story?
Still, that would still not necessarily be a game though, because of the lack of a set goal or a win-loss condition.
Okay? Cool. Now I'm going to give you something that comes from the acting world. And also in story writing world. You have your protagonist. And a protagonist usually has, well, in actors' terms, has an objective, a super objective, which is, here is what I am trying to achieve. That could be seen as a goal, could it not? So, Hamlet wants to figure out whether or not there was some nefarious stuff going on with his uncle, in relation to his uncle and his dead father and his mother. And ultimately, he does find out, and he dies. Yeah?
I would say that the term of game and story could be synonymous because they both have objectives, they both have things that are inherent to human nature, and up to the scope for which they're perceived in, that can be what defines what they're called.
Good?
I think the distinction came from the technological limitations video games had at their conception, that we couldn't achieve that type of in-depth emotional story back in the 70s and 80s when we were still trying to figure out the medium in itself.
Ah. So based on where the technologies came from, that what could be, have you seen early motion pictures? People walking down the street, It's like, oh, how compelling. What was it that was compelling about, because something was compelling about seeing people walking down the street or seeing a train coming right at you in the movie theater. What was compelling about that?
It was novel. Nobody had seen anything like that before. So it was a simple thing, but it was interesting to see because it's something that's new.
Okay. And what happened once it stopped being novel?
They had to innovate new techniques to keep that interest and develop the medium.
And what was it that kept that interest?
Being able to empathize with the audience.
Being able to empathize, being able to feel something for whom?
Characters.
For the characters in the story. That if you see Hamlet, and at the end he dies, I don't think many of the audience walk out going, let's go back, because I think he can take out that guy and kill the king and live. They walk out completely satisfied with the story. But if you were playing, if that was a video game, it's like, go back. Come on, it's not that big a boss. We can take him out. Why is there a different relationship? Yeah.
Because if a story takes place in a game versus a story, you can affect the story. Whereas if you're watching a movie or reading a book, it's fed to you and you cannot change it or interact with it at all. Whereas in a game, even if it's a story, a different game, and it has multiple outcomes, and it's on you how the story evolves.
It's interesting because the thing that shows up for me is going, because games have been made as interactive. And stories have thousands of years of history where the interactivity was not in relation to how the story played out. There was absolutely interactivity in terms of how people felt about it or how their attention and changed the way that the story was told. But ultimately, they weren't in the middle of the story. They were outside of it. So we have a form in game that has been from inside from the beginning. We have a form that is story that has been outside for a lot of its life. And I think that there are some things that we can utilize that are going to give gaming a broader scope of what is possible. So if you take a story and you go, how many people know that dragon cancer? Okay, a few. And this was something that somebody shared with me of going, Jeff, here's a story. Here's a video game that's a story, and there's not a way to win it. You just kind of go through. You're in it, and it has some game mechanics in it. Has some things that you do. There's ways that you engage, but ultimately, it doesn't. And I went, oh, cool. And I went and I watched a playthrough of it, and I watched another playthrough of it, and I'm like, I was moved, but not by the game. I was moved because the guy who built that, his kid died of cancer. And this was his way of working through something awful. And so when I was watching that experience, I was like, oh, because it meant more than just what was happening there. There was a meta level of understanding that was happening as the playthrough was going. There was somebody back in, I think it was in the 70s, said, the reason that we watch the Olympics is to see who wins. The stories behind the Olympics are why we care. That being able to that story brings with it something where it's about, this matters to me. Like, this mattered primarily in the sense of who won. But why did it matter who won was absent. And I think that we can find some places where we can go, ooh, we can build things where it doesn't so much matter who wins as what underlies that. If you think of a story as being a series, right now let's say it's a series of emotional events that are satisfying regardless of who wins. It doesn't mean that you can't win or that there isn't winning or loss involved. It just means that that isn't what makes it satisfying or unsatisfying. That there is this journey of emotional events. And good story feels like this thing caused this thing, and this thing caused the next thing. So being able to have, yep, this event led to this event, which then caused this event to happen. That's screenwriting 101, that you want there to be causality to the things that are going on. And if there is an emotional place that this stuff is living, now we are starting to have an empathetic relationship. And if that journey is one where it's not, where what matters is not the win or the loss, because characters are going to have a goal, a super objective that they may achieve or they may not. But you can come out the other end and go, whoa, yeah, that resonated for me. Either I loved it or, whew, God, that gives me chills. But you feel satisfied in some fashion by the experience. And cool. You've got something that is bringing the strength of story and the strength of game into a place that allows people to have the kind of experience that they are ready to have. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some emotions. I want you to talk to me about emotions that you have seen in video games. Not seen. Emotions you have felt as a result of playing a video game.
I felt a lot of wonder because I like RPG games where like you're exploring like this crazy world or an unusual. Like you start in the first area and then you go and like it feels like the horizon's like the limit. It's really cool.
Could that be defined as kind of visual of that there's wonder of, look at what is here? Is that accurate? I want to make sure I'm not, okay, cool. So there's wonder with, what is here? Yes?
I'm going to say emotion I felt with the game before was frustration. And I can give the example.
Yeah.
Feeling very frustrated, dying over and over.
Cool. So there was a deal of survival and the lack thereof that was creating frustration. Okay? Cool.
Kind of piggybacking off what he said, that same game, that frustration leads to like overjoy when you do like accomplish the goal that you failed so many times that like it makes it more satisfying that
Cool. Give me, is there a goal, can you think of a specific example where there was a goal that you were trying to achieve? Where it was like,
like just a lot of the like bosses you die constantly and eventually you kind of figure it out and you win and there's just kind of overelation of like, oh, I finally did it.
All right. So being able to destroy a boss, a fearsome boss. Okay? Good? Yes?
I've felt like a lot of sadness before in the game.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys played Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, but that ending, my God. Like they force you to go and play as a specific character, and you know he's not gonna make it, but they force you to go through that last battle over, not like over and over again, but it's several parts, and like throughout the fight he's just getting weaker. You start losing your abilities. He starts limping, and he can barely even swing the sword or whatever, and he makes it all the way through, but then the last guy kind of gets him, and it's rough.
Yeah. Cool. So again, this is related to the survival component, right? But that's not all that it is. Like, you've had other things where it's like, oh, my character didn't survive this. Why did this survival moment matter more? Why did it hit deeper?
Because you've gone, this game is like probably 50, 60 hours or something like that. I'm playing this game forever. and just like at the end, which if you know the story, you know he doesn't make it like from the jump, but if you didn't know, then, yeah, it's really bad.
Yep. Cool. So you've just described part of how right now a lot of the where does the really strong emotion stuff tend to show up currently in video games?
Conflict.
In conflict points? Yep. And where does sadness tend to show up?
Death or loss of a major character.
And how is a major character? What makes a major character be major?
Because you have a strong emotional attachment from the interactions you perceive with them.
And that is over a course of time, right? That if you had somebody who's like, I'm the major character, you'd be like, all right, you're gone. So there is investment of time. There is a deal of the more, you know, the people who have been in a relationship that was good to begin with, but it's gotten really bad, and they're like, I know I shouldn't be in this relationship, but I've already put in so much time. And they just, people stop looking at each other. So, yeah, that place of personal investment, of I've put in this much time, therefore, once I have done that, I have stronger feelings about ending it or about solving it. Like, that is currently how a lot of this stuff happens. Part of that has to do with the fact that if you are placed in the role of a character, what is defining your character? Go for it.
Wouldn't it be your actions that you choose throughout the game? Because some games have the conflict of being evil or good, and they're all based on how you act within that world. And some games will display the character getting darker or lighter depending on how you act or your decisions.
Cool. So where you get a reputation within the story that affects how people relate to you. Yep. What kind of actions do you get to take?
Well, in like Mass Effect, there were certain choices where you would choose to save this hostile race or not, or
kill them all and do genocide.
Yep.
And you had the choice of like giving the cure to them or not. And depending on what you did, certain people would like you and certain people wouldn't.
Good. Good. So by now you should start to recognize a pattern in terms of what kinds of actions are being done. You've heard people mention these things. And for those of you who were with me this morning, you probably already have a sense on this. So let's see what shows up in terms of other people's thoughts about this. But what do you notice is consistent amongst the ways in which you can act on the story?
Actions that determine the fate of other elements or characters within the story.
Mm-hmm. And what if you were to describe here's an action that my character did to make that happen? Give an example of what that could be.
If there's somebody who you see is getting beaten or attacked by somebody and you have the choice to intervene or not, that character, and based on whether you help them or not, may be gone from the story. They may die and you never see them again, or if you do help them, they may become your friend or help you out.
Good. So how do you tend to intervene?
Typically by dealing with whatever's threatening the person in need.
And what are the ways to intervene?
You can destroy the threat. You can talk or try to either violently or non-violently address the situation.
Okay. So the difference between, do you feel how those are logistics? Even the talking that you're describing is a form of logistic. There's command centers for like fire. When they have firefighters and all these folks coming, the command center, the person who's going, okay, so and so this, or you're looking at talking down a person who's going to jump. That there is a kind of, all right, so you got to get their attention onto things that they care about. You've got to, do you feel how that's still a form of logistics? And if all you do is logistics, when you're trying to talk somebody down from jumping, your odds are less. What is it that you need to also be able to do in order to make it so that a person doesn't jump?
You need to care. You need to be emotionally invested in the outcome.
And if you are, that's half the equation. What's the other half?
They need to be emotionally invested in the outcome.
Right. That give and take of emotional connection has to be there. And this is where we're dealing right now, I think, with the limitations of what technology has been, but not necessarily of what it's going to be. Like, you're at the cusp of where the platforms that we play our games upon is shifting dramatically. And rather than just recreating what has been done on 2D screens, moving into 3D spaces, of going, what do we have the capacity to do in dimensional space that we didn't have the capacity to do before? What do we have the capacity to do when we can see a player's face? These are data points. These are things that give you information that you can use that right now is not particularly being used.
You can read the emotions of the person playing the game.
And what would you do if you could?
You could determine whether they were emotionally invested or not in whatever was going on, and then that would govern how the other elements in the game, because if they don't see that you're invested, then you have that breakdown of where you both need to be invested.
Right. And right now, what are the dominant ways in which we get how a player is actually feeling?
Just like choosing arbitrary dialogue choices, numbers.
There you go. And dialogue is language, right? How much of our processing is based on language in terms of relationships with other people? How much is that?
I'm not certain, but I think it's really small. It's actually like 5-10% maybe.
It's really small. What is all the rest of it? Your body language, your tone of voice, your facial affect, like all this other stuff. It's stuff that is so nuanced, and yet we're now starting to get technologies that deliver that, right? That there are now methods by which to capture a face without markers. What if the purpose of capturing the face was not about just, we're going to then animate this avatar with it? What if it was a means by which to be able to extrapolate an emotional state of your player so that your game can become responsive to that? What's this? What's this?
Oh no, I'm just excited.
Yeah.
When you say it out loud like that, it makes me feel like we've been really stupid as an industry. And that the first time we got our hands on the chance to take a picture of the player, we just wanted to scan their face and shove it on the avatar. There you go. You're in the game now. It's like, the way I'm in the game is if you make me care about it. So we missed the opportunity to actually read the face. We're just snapping a picture of it.
Yeah. And it makes sense. You know, the first things after showing people walking on the street that they did with motion pictures was to set the camera in one place and point it at a stage and have actors do a play. Because that's what they knew. You know, it's not anybody's fault. It's just that's what they knew. But, you guys, here's what's awesome. You don't have to be those people. Like, you can be the people who see what is possible that isn't being seen by other people. That if you go, what would I do if I knew that the player was either sad or happy? And I'm going to give you a really simple binary thing. That if you like somebody, what does your body tend to want to do? Want to be closer to him. And if you find them repulsive in some fashion, it backs you up. Really super simple binary. Something that you could absolutely play with. Now, let's pose it this way. Say that you want now to create, you know how they go, here's the character you're going to care about because she's a little girl that is war-torn and, you know, has a sympathetic face. Is that the best character for every player to care about? Why?
Not everybody can have that relational aspect just off of their profile.
Okay.
They need something more and more of an investment to get them captivated.
Nice, nice. So picture this. If you wanted to utilize this closer or further away as a way to be able to gauge something, what if you had a variety of kinds of characters in story? I'm not talking about scroll through and pick. I'm talking about you're in the beginning of the story and there's a variety, and there's the weary, you know, the guy who's seen the world and is tired of it and just wants to have a drink. And there's the woman who is there because her father said there was no way she was ever going to make something of her life, and she's there to prove that she can. If all these are NPCs, how could you use the proximity gauge as a means by which to build a relationship between the player and a character that is going to actually resonate for that particular player?
You could have something where the NPCs begin with a basic dialogue. If the player stays engaged, you can increase the dialogue and increase the backstory, up to which increases the amount of knowledge and time that player spends with that character, further investing them into the character that they choose to. And then from there, you can extrapolate anything from a team of characters that you could choose to take out of that city, or the story begins at that point. There's limitless possibilities.
Mm-hmm. So if instead of going, this type of character is the one you're going to care about, that you create, and I'd like to suggest, what if the constraints were you can't even use dialogue? I mean, you can, but let's say that you couldn't. How could you then use proximity as a means by which to go, where are we going to build this relationship?
You would use the setting and the theme. So if you were to see the guy who's tired at the world in the bar,
Yep.
you happen to stumble upon that, and that's your fancy, you can go up there, grab a drink with him, and maybe he'll buy you a drink, or you can buy him a drink, and then you can begin nonverbal interaction that way. Or if you see the lady who's trying to prove herself on the street, trying to be independent, but she may need a little bit of help, you can offer that help, and then, that's how you can start building relationships.
Nice, nice. Do you feel how there are actions being described here that are not about lifting, shooting, running, jumping? These are actions that are relational. They're things that are based on your relationship to another entity. And you guys, we do this not just with human beings. We do it with cars, Oh my God, I love my car. We endow them as being of having personalities. Come on, baby, come on. Oh, just 2 more miles, please. Like that we treat objects as though they are human beings. That the place that we build connection with another is through that assumption of a relationship. So you being able to craft potential relationships and see where they are drawn to, and then be able to expand from that so that in essence they are choosing the person that they will care about, not you dictating it.
You just said that we treat objects as if they're human beings, and I agree with you. It's our normal lens of interaction. It's personifying objects. It just strikes me that the reverse is true in games, that we even treat human beings as objects in games. What reward am I going to get from you? Or what mission are you going to give me? Or how much experience do I get if I interact with you? And that is completely antithetical to the way we live our lives.
Well, that many of us live our lives.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if you were going to craft a relationship, if you're going to create an opportunity for a relationship to exist, I would like to hear from you, then I wish I could, and fill in the blank. It doesn't have to be, I know how this would happen. I want to hear, how would you, if you could wave the magic wand, what would you make possible in terms of game design that may not even exist right now?
I want to create an artificial construct who can simulate, emulate, and even complement someone's psychology and emotions. If you have an AI friend who knows that you're sad, they can help you feel better. They can say something to make you smile. If you're objective and determined to complete a goal, they can give you motivation. They can interpret that and read you and interpret whatever you're going through and surprise.
Cool.
Some type of help.
Cool. So now I want to give you a way to be able to hack that. All right? I need one person who is okay with coming up here and just playing a little bit. You don't have to. I'm not concerned about you being fantastic. It's more just a person who's okay being in front of the group and doing a little bit of make-believe with me. Who's that person going to be? I'll tell you what, I will wait here, and whoever... Right on. What's your name?
Jake.
Jake. First off, thank you, Jake.
No problem.
That's awesome. All right, so here's the deal. I'm going to become programmatic here. I'm going to get programmatic on you. And...
I'm a programmer.
Yeah, awesome. What I want you to do is have a conversation with me. So don't worry about it being programmatic. Just carry on some kind of a conversation with me, okay? Here's what I want you to do. Who's going to be my sensor? It just means you're going to identify when you see a shift in his face or body, like a slight shift of emotion or a change of perspective. You want to do that?
Sure.
Oh, but I said, although we've played together a lot, so okay, we haven't played. Is that right? Just because, okay.
Cool.
All right, so when you see a shift in his face or his body, and don't worry about shifting your face or body, just let yourself do whatever, okay? Then I want you to go now, all right? And I'll tell you what I'm doing. It's not going to be a thing scary. Ha! All right, so here we go. We'll begin. Wow. You've been gone for like a long time.
Well, yeah. I just had so much work I had to do.
Tell me about it.
Well, I had to create a whole game in assembly.
Really?
Yeah, really.
I should have heard a now there. Because his affect changed. You guys see it? So it's back to the place where you were starting to laugh, okay? All right, now here's the deal. Each of these things, I was not responding to any of your words. I was using Eliza inside of me. Do you guys know Eliza?
Yeah,
okay. The what?
The chatbot?
Yep. And I was letting a sensor tell me when shifts were happening in you. And all I was doing was changing my emotional affect with no intelligence whatsoever. I wasn't going, I'll do this move because of your stuff. I was going, I'll do this adjustment of affect just because there has been a change in you. Now, this didn't feel completely lifelike. Did it have some kind of emotional presence for you?
What exactly do you mean by that? Sorry.
No. That's a completely legit question. All right? So the difference between that and this. Don't worry about the nows on this one. Here we go, okay? So, you've been gone for a long time.
Yep, had a long drive ahead of me.
What's up with that?
I'm really far away.
Really?
Yep.
Feel how with no emotional shift, you feel the difference?
Yeah.
And if I'm doing it where it is not on a change of you, so we'll do it again. Been gone for a long while. Feel how it's weird to have the emotional shift happen when there isn't something you've done? But when there is a shift that happens in you, even if it doesn't totally make sense, even if it's not like, well, obviously that's what the emotional shift would be. So, why you been gone so long?
Trying to avoid you.
Now, we don't know why is happening, but do you feel how you want to have what's going on here? You assume that this is a result of what you did. That's the causality that you can leverage so that you can get rid of a fair amount of the I in AI and still have it feel fairly I. Nice work, man. Thank you. Yeah. So thinking in terms of emotional shift as being a tool that you can use, and the more it can be the result of something without necessarily having to know what that something is, the more you can start to build an emotional relationship. Now, layer that with, oh, this is the character that I was drawn to. It's not just, oh, this is like The Last of Us, you know? It's like, oh, I have a home and, family, but how close do you feel to that family? Not very. Because you just kind of been stuck, like you're filling the function of being a member of this family. But imagine what it would be like if you actually did have a feeling for those folks. The deal of, oh, I can prepare things on the stove. But what's the big question? Yeah, I can prepare things on the stove, but why? Because I'm living the day-to-day life. That's not satisfying. That's logistics. But having a character that truly has some form of responsiveness to you, not just what you do, but to how you are. Not just what you do, but how you are. That will more rapidly build you a connection that will start to feel real, even though you know it's not. Did I see a thought?
Yeah, I just wanted to remark that when you were reacting, even though you were playing Eliza in your brain, but when you were reacting with body language to him, you didn't make it clear why you were doing those things through your speech. But left in that vacuum, I think it's very natural that we speculate and fill the gap with what we think you might have been thinking, which is very intriguing to us. It's enticing.
It's the reason that haikus still work. There's not so many words in them that you no longer have to read between the lines. That the more you are filling in the blanks, the more you are building that story with. So allowing yourself to, when you are crafting these things, allowing yourself to create things where there is room in between for them to generate, oh, it may be because of this. And have you ever had an assumption about somebody that later on was proved wrong? Did that make your story of that experience any less compelling? Discovering that things were not what you thought they were is still a potent emotional place. So it allows you to have breathing room for things that are not as intelligent as human beings and yet still can create solid story. So I want to give you a really simple tool to be able to make it so that a player, feels like, I accomplished this. And it uses the tool of 3. For this one, whoever you are, you can stay in your seat, but I want to carry on a brief conversation with you. So who's somebody in the seat that I can talk to momentarily? Great. Okay. So I want you to ask a favor of me, some kind of favor, okay?
Hey, would you mind doing something for me?
Depends on what it is. What do you have in mind?
Would you be willing to give me a ride home tonight?
Really? A ride home? Seriously? Again?
What, man? What's wrong with that?
Dude, you have been asking for a ride home like every day this month.
I don't know, man. It's not like I want to. I need to.
Oh. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, if you need it, sure. Okay, do you feel that? You feel how there's a resist, and then a follow. Did you feel like you affected something in me? It is such a simple tool, and yet completely plug and play for so many kinds of settings. And it makes a person feel the difference of that, and now ask me again for the ride.
Hey man, would you be willing to give me a ride home tonight?
Oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Cool.
It doesn't feel as satisfying, right? Because what we're dealing with here is story form in microform. Because a story is not as satisfying as there once was a very wealthy man who wanted to be president. He campaigned and campaigned and campaigned. He became president. It's not a satisfying story because there's no obstacle. There's no challenge. By you having a challenge where it's push, push, and the other cool thing about utilizing this tool is you find out, you can identify, you can deliver narratively what matters to this character, this NPC. What is it that mattered to this NPC?
He wasn't just asking him because he was there, but there was like this serious reason for him that he needed these rides. Like it was a necessity, not a, oh, I don't feel like driving.
Right, right. Do you feel how this is a way to deliver exposition about a character without going, well, Hank, you've always looked for people who care about something more than just the surface. Like you don't have to deliver it through verbal exposition, you do it through how they play.
Out of curiosity, and I'm pretty sure everybody here has been in that position, is that why, say you're angry at somebody and the moment you confront them and the first thing they say is, well, I'm sorry, you just don't feel satisfied. You kind of were expecting a fight. You wanted to prove your point, you wanted to yell and all that.
Yeah. And if you want to put it into really extreme terms, it's why there's a thing called makeup sex. that deal of struggle followed by success feels better because it feels like it has been earned.
I was going to say that's a very powerful contextual situation. And I was thinking in the terms of games, could you use that as a tool to help you learn your characters better in the sense of if you have this repetitive mission where you constantly have to give the same guy a ride home and you have the option to resist and they can use that tactic to disarm you, but you also learn more about the character.
Yes. Yeah, that's that you see what the trigger is that causes them to go along. That the player sees, oh, that's what makes this person go along. So now you're starting to know them as a person, not just as a function in the story. So here's another tool that you can use to be able to make it so that you have, like, do you feel how I'm looking at ways to make it so that relationship and emotion start to become tools that you can craft for narrative and gameplay purposes? So if you've got, let's say that we've got these 4 different characters and I decide I'm going to go, that I approach the weary guy who's drinking his beer. What is a way to make it so that that character, I feel even more drawn to, like I've made the initial approach. What's going to make it so I feel even more drawn to that character?
Maybe he notices you're there and invites you over.
Cool. So this will be easier to see. So somebody come play with me. Cool. All right, so I'm going to have you be the player. We're going to treat him like an avatar in the space for now, but you don't have to avatar yourself. You can use everything you got. All right, so you're going to come in.
How you doing there? See you drinking on some Jack and whiskey. It's a strong combination. Can I get you another one?
You can do whatever you like.
Oh man, what's your story?
Okay, so right now, does the player feel a rapport with this person? Why?
You seem disinterested.
Okay, good. How does he seem?
Interested.
Right. I know this seems obvious, but it is not utilized as much as it could be utilized. What's going to make him feel like, oh, I like this guy?
Offers him a shot of the alcohol.
So what you're describing now is moving into the concept. There's a book called Love Languages, and there are things that people go, oh, this is what makes me feel valued. So there's words of affirmation, there's acts of service, there's gifts, there's quality time spent, and there's touch. So these are things that different people have different things that resonate. That thing might be like the offering of that might appeal to this person if this person's language is, oh, gifts make me feel connected. But if it doesn't, it might not do it, right? What is present here that gives us better odds of building a connection? Yeah.
I think it's just like acknowledging that he's there. Like I felt like you were very, like he was talking to you, but you were kind of talking to a wall because there's no interaction at all. And then you finally said something that was very short. It was just you cut it off, and it was like a yes or no answer.
Good. So what you're describing here is, like, I could say, well, that's the character, right? Couldn't the character lead go, well, that's the character. The character isn't going to be like, hey, you're my best pal, right? So if we want to maintain this character, but build a connection, what could be done that doesn't violate the character that has been built?
Perhaps you just offer a glance at him, or turn your head and you quirk an eyebrow, or just some very minimalist form of acknowledgement.
All right. So I want to give you something on this. Right now, my question is almost misleading you. Because my question is based on, what should I do? What should this NPC do? How do you know what this NPC should do?
Couldn't the character do something like buy him a drink to get him to open up a bit?
He could, but he didn't. But let's use that for a moment, okay? Another tool that we'll just side branch on this, connect the dots. That if you don't see drinks, a bartender, a glass, something like that, it won't even occur to him, it may not occur to him that he could buy me a drink, right? So in your design of the space, you know how you put light on particular things that you want the player to be a little bit more aware of? So you might light a glass that is over here, and you might have, what might be an action that would create the need for this from the player that this guy could do.
His glass is almost, I think he's like swirling the ice. It's
Nice.
Almost done.
It's almost done, which is almost there, and then shit. Do you feel how there is an invitation here without saying, I sure am thirsty? Can you feel that? And if you've got the glass that is lit, and if you've got things, not like, hi, I'm glowing, please pick me up, not that kind of thing, but stuff that allows the player to be smart, to connect the dots. It's a great thing to be able to play test in live, is going, okay, here's the setting, here's the things, and you have those things, and you go, let's play this and see what the person does. You can get to where you can increase the odds that a player will do a particular action based on what physical elements you introduce and the need you have established. So if you're doing connect the dots, you need to know what's the need here? Drinking. He's thirsty. He wants another drink. Without him saying, I want another drink. And what is the tool that can be used to address that?
The other glass of alcohol?
Bottle of alcohol. There is something where you are creating the opportunity, but does the story have to go off the rails if they don't pour a glass of alcohol? No. But it makes it so that if they do, they're like, I did something well. I made impact. Okay, so we're going back to the place of, right now you're looking at, I'm asking you, what can I do? But where does the answer to what I can do show up?
Environment.
Specifically, where? Like
the bottle and the cup.
And let's say that we're not even worried about the getting a glass. Like right now we're just trying to establish rapport. As I want you right now to feel this deal of going, but what? Because this is what I think is part of what is frequently missed. The answer is here. The answer is within your player, not exclusively in the environment or in the character's stuff. It's in how your player is. How was this player? You described it a bit ago. How is he being? Interested. Okay? Can Grumpy in the Seven Dwarves, can Grumpy be pleased about something? He better be. You know? Yeah. Okay. There is a default modality that is your character that you can then put any emotional state into. So, here we go.
Looks like you're running low on that.
Yeah.
Mind a refill? Courtesy on me. So, what brings you to this place?
Do you feel how we are starting to connect here? Can you feel that showing up? This is the thing that I would say to you guys. I know this is not comfortable to do. I know practically every person in this room will go, well, I'm not an actor. But being able to embody this, could you feel how you were starting to have a vibe with this guy?
Yeah.
When you can play test it like this, where you don't have to do one bit of work on a pad, a screen, of this, to find, oh, that's nice, that works, now let's put that into what we're creating. Whether it's the concept art, whether it's the actual programming, or whatever the stuff is, now you've got something you go, that works in life, let's find a way to put that within the virtual and real commingled worlds. Because what created this connection is that I was able to feel the place that you were playing from. Now here is where the challenge lies. What could you possibly use to get what I'm reading off of him as a human being, utilizing your technology? Yeah.
I think we have a great gift in that we can be meticulous in recording the behaviors of the player, knowing precise actions they've done. Definitely rare. We forget that we can start to analyze that data to find out, oh, this player is interested in hearing other characters' stories. They've asked for a backstory on every character they've met. I know this. I can now play off it.
Yeah. And how is that data getting delivered in the example you're giving?
We're keeping track of it as the player is playing. We have those metrics.
In what form?
Oh, well, it's ones and zeros. It's very mathematical.
But is it like language based?
No, it's action based.
Okay.
They do.
Okay. So then things that we kind of take as, oh, the character approaches, like instead of just going character approaches, going, okay, the character approaches, does the player remain where he is? Does he back off? Does he move a little closer? Do you feel how there's things that you absolutely could be measuring and using as metrics that right now it's just like it's being done in such broad strokes frequently, unless it's something where it's like, okay, so this projectile is going to go this, like there we get really precise measurement, right? Why not be utilizing that kind of precise measurement for what it means to be a human being with another human being? Because now you're not only going to have those projectiles happening, the caring about what happens is going to happen because you care about that NPC. And not until you get to the end and where the little girl dies. No, I'm talking about in the first quarter of your story, so that it starts becoming a part of your investment in everything else that is happening. Right on, man.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, what time is it? Okay. So tell me what you would like. Tell me what could be useful to you now.
Like that you can tell us, or just things just anything? Is that a blue sky sort of question? Because I got a couple things. If it's blue sky, I got a couple things.
Based on what we are looking at here in today.
I think it's actually one of the biggest things that draws you out of a game being immersive is the fact that certain aspects of the game are still gamified. One of my favorite things to do in like RPG games like Skyrim and Dishonored is the first thing I try to do is I break the game, and I can't help it. I think within the first 5 minutes of Dishonored, this guy comes up off the boat and he's like, "Oh, so you're the noob, blah, blah, blah." And the first thing I did was I flipped out my sword. I'm like, "No, I'm the protagonist of this." Like, I literally screamed at the computer. I'm like, "I'm the protagonist," and I cut him down and I killed him. Turns out he's like important to the story or something. And the game ended right there. And then but he didn't move or anything when I did that. And as you're describing this stuff, I'd be like, well, why not? Why doesn't, the minute he does this crazy sword animation, like somebody did that to me in real life, first thing I do is double back and whip out mine and be like, oh, are we doing this now? It's something small, but it's something that's overlooked like all the time. Yeah, I don't know. Well, and then in a real world technological application of it, we have facial capture technology. We have eye recording technology. Like, and you're asking us why aren't we employing those to measure even the small. If we have technology that can measure eye movements and twitchiness, why can't we measure like crinkling eyes, turn up of one side of the mouth, and then employ that in a game because we have the metrics to do so.
Right. Right. And there's going to be a lot of trial and error, but the more you trial, the less the error.
And that'll make the games more immersive.
Yep.
Talk about how future technologies can affect the way we look at emotion. What I would like to think about is how we can apply new ways to show emotion to the player with the technologies that we have today. Like say, if we're looking at doing a game that is based on a genre that we know, so we're looking at different, we're building off iteration of what we've seen before, but how do we iterate it so we bring more emotion to the player?
Cool. Start by going, if anything were possible in this story, anything, not more of what we've already done, but anything, what would that anything be? And then go, how could I make that happen? What is there available? It's like the first time that I put on a Vive, that I went, ooh, wait a minute, yeah, I can see the controllers, and I asked somebody, hey, when I lift it up like this, I want you to, without my feeling it, I want you to hold it and continue the trajectory. And I was able to take something and make it fly because I was going, what's possible? What do I wish? And then going, how could I make that happen given the tools that I have available to me? So start by moving outside the realm of, okay, so we know we've got these mechanics that we can use, and we know that, like, if you start with your tool, you will build the structure that you hold the tools for. So let go of those tools for a minute to go, what do I wish it might look like? And then see if the tools that you have can be tweaked, hacked, modified to achieve that thing that you've not imagined. And the thing I would, this is my bias, I know, but the thing I would suggest is that you see that you look in terms of what is there between sentient beings? I hesitate to say people because so frequently it's not just people. But you know what I mean? What would I wish could happen here between these folks? Like, and the reason this is so hardwired for us, you guys, is this: if you go and if there's a beautiful sunset, if you are out on this amazing beach and there's this gorgeous sunset, it's like, that's amazing. Like you take that moment of there, but if you are by yourself, what is frequently your next thought? Selfie. What's that? Selfie. Selfie. Yeah. Yeah. Like, imagine that you graduate and you get the dream job. You can be totally excited for yourself, but it ain't the same as having that person that you care about, or that person who said you're never going to grow up to be anything. Here, guess what? That our desire to share emotion is hardwired into us because we are a social species. And we can leverage that for a more powerful story.
I was going to say something that I'm kind of interested in when it comes to like the technology we have now and like what we can do with it. For my undergrad, I wrote a paper on using biometrics in space in the industry. And the two things I was looking at is like in horror games, it would be really awesome if you could do facial tracking to see when a player feels smug, like they're reassured, like I'm not scared at this moment. When to try to scare them. If they're too scared, when to kind of pull back a little bit because there's too much tension at that point. And also using things like heartbeat to kind of determine how they're feeling, like is their heart rate increasing? So should that allow the creatures to know where they're at, or should we pull back off of that?
And one of the tricky things with biometrics is that certain emotional states that are apparently very different are biologically frequently quite similar. Which doesn't mean you can't use it, it just means you got to be really clever about how you use it.
You said horror, right?
Yeah.
What about a horror game you couldn't hit the escape button or pause from? What about that? That would really draw you in. I know so many people that want to play horror games that are just like, I can't, it's too scary. And they like get to the scary part and then they just close out the game. And it's like, you're getting kind of scared, but you're really not. But like, can you imagine a game where you couldn't exit when you got to that breaking point, and then like maybe after you die or something, like maybe. But like that whole not being able to pause. Yeah, wait. Yeah, there are some horror games that do that.
Or they pause. Instead of pausing, they show a little screen where you can look at it, but you're still in the game.
Yeah, you're right. They are playing it that way. Same with Last of Us, like that crafting on the fly in the heat of battle. You have to take time and do that while people are running around shooting and throwing at you.
So the framework that I would suggest you keep in mind as well is that games don't have to happen to a player. That if you think of it as games happening with a player. Because that player who goes, I don't want that place. If it gets to the place where it's like, I absolutely don't want this, that they walk away from it. It is being able to build their, like the thing that would be interesting to me on that is what if you could build that person's sense of confidence, not cockiness, of confidence, of being able to stand up in a scary situation where it's been debilitating to them. And we do that in terms of early gameplay of going, okay, so we're going to have you practice the skills that you're going to need later on. Why can't we be doing that emotionally as well? But we can be crafting things that allow people not just to joystick button-based, but to emotionally based, engage in ways that make them more than they thought they were when they started to play the game.
One thing that I found interesting about what you said, remember the game BioShock?
Yep.
Horror game, everybody's afraid, and everybody's afraid to go go against the Big Daddy because they know what the capable of.
Yep.
But then you go to Bioshock 2 and now you are a Big Daddy. And I remember when I played, I wasn't scared anymore because I'm like, I'm a Big Daddy. People should be afraid of me.
Right.
So I didn't see that game so much as a horror game as just a shooter game. So
Right. Yep.
I felt like the game kind of did that.
Cool. So, I will tell you, I'm going to wrap up now. The thing that my hope would be that moving forward, the next time that you find yourself moving into this is the way it's been done, that there's a little pause button in your life. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like right down here, and it makes everything pause just briefly. If you hit that pause button and go, if anything were possible, what would I wish? And then let that wish call you to an imagination, call you to a creativity that already lives inside you, that moves us beyond what exists now. And hopefully some of the things, the tools and the frameworks that we've talked about today are things that could be useful to you, but that's not where the answers lie. The answers are going to lie inside of you. And sometimes to turn off all that noise that is our history, that is what we have been taught, and let yourselves truly dream, and then take the action to make that dream become something another step closer. It's never going to be all that you can dream, but another step closer is that much closer. If there's more stuff that you want to chat about, I'm happy to take a few minutes after we let everybody go to do that. But thank you for being an awesome group of folks today. And thank you for playing, for the folks who played today. All right? Thank you much.